and welcome to another in the occasional ISAC series on living legends, where we interview accomplished people in the realms of infectious diseases. I'm Ian Gould, professor in Aberdeen University and former president of ISAC. And today it's a great pleasure to interview an old friend and sparring partner, Kurt Naber, who has always impressed me with his indefatigability and his enthusiasm, particularly for international liaison. Kurt, as we'll hear, has led a varied and exciting life. Kurt, do you want to tell us briefly about the early days?
Okay, I was born in May 1941 in Łódź, Poland, and in January 45, we fled with my mother, grandmother, and brother and sister as war refugees from Poland to Germany in a horse-drawn wagon. I grew up and went to school in Kempten, that is a city southwest of Germany, close to the Alps.
So your family were German. It was common pre-war for Germans to live in Poland.
Yes,
so that's why
many Germans were living in Poland.
Yeah. So you were lucky to get out, I think.
I was lucky to get out and survive this because there were always Russian fighters above us.
Yeah, it's exciting times which probably your family could have done without. You graduated, I think, and went to study medicine in Munich. Is that right?
Yes, from 1960 until 1966. And then I received my medical license in 1968. But maybe interesting, during my time in Munich, I was also engaged singing in the Munich Bach Choir. So something completely different. And with concerts all over Germany and Europe, even concerts in North America, Montreal, New York, in the well-known Carnegie Hall, Baltimore, Washington. And also concerts, the first time, 1968, in Moscow and Leningrad. At that time, the name was Leningrad, St. Petersburg. That was the first exchange between Germany and Soviet Union, cultural exchange. But the interesting was we get contact to so many students of the music academy in Moscow. And so we young people had contact.
Fantastic experience. Why did you end up as a urologist with a major research interest in antimicrobials?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I have chosen medicine because my father was a medical doctor and I liked what he did and what he told about. And after my stay in Munich, after the university, I moved to the University of Marburg and started with my training first in surgery. And after 1 year, urology, which I finished then as specialist in 1973. And during that time already, I started to collaborate either with surgeons or urologists who did some work on research.
Your research specialty of urology, it's interesting, I suspect, how you became a urologist.
Yeah, that was the following. I joined the German Society of Urology during the Congress in 1970. And there I met Paul O. Madsen, professor of urology at the Veterans Administration Hospital and University of Madison, Wisconsin, United States. And he offered me a 1 year research and clinical exchange. Therefore, we lived as a young family with 2 children for 1 year in the university houses in Madison, Wisconsin, together with so many other young families connected to the university from all over the world. And that was a fantastic time.
Indeed. It taught you early the value of international collaboration. I think you gained some distinction early on with your research there.
Yeah, he asked me what I want to do, and then he recommended that I should do investigation on renal lymphs. And I started in animal lab after I have learned it from the nephrologist how to manage it. And because we thought the renal lymph concentrations of the different antibiotics are the best indicator for renal tissue concentrations, because all the so-called renal tissue concentration published so far were somehow contaminated with urine, because you cannot differentiate it.
Yeah. And you went on in later years, in the late 70s, I think, you became a member of the AUA and started international collaboration with the Society for Infection, Inflammation and Urology.
Yeah. Since I could present my research 1972 at the Congress of the American Urological Association and get a prize, and therefore I get known to people who also were interested in UTI. And so we started to work together, and finally we built even a society on infection and inflammation in urology within the EAU as a so-called working group, together with the American and colleagues from Canada. And that was a very interesting group to work with them together since many years up to now.
But most of your work has been from Straubing. How did you end up going to Straubing?
Yeah, in 1975, I left the University of Marburg and became then head of the Department of Urology of the Hospital St. Elisabeth in Straubing in Bavaria, which is a teaching hospital of the Technical University of Munich. And therefore, I became associate professor of urology of the Technical University of Munich. And then I was there working as urologist in Bavaria.
You had already joined the Paul Ehrlich Society, I think, and soon became president. That was an important moment for you, I think, in terms of your international associations.
Yeah, the Paul Ehrlich Society is an affiliated member of the ISAC. And there I was a member since 1975. And when I was then president of the society, we initiated first multidisciplinary guidelines in Germany on uncomplicated UTI in adults, with all the disciplines, with gynecologists and internists and microbiologists, pharmacologists, and so on. And this was published first 2010, and now still it's updated every year.
Yeah. And your association with Paul Ehrlich gave you the entry to international collaborations, which you've become famous for. I think your early days with FESCI and such like. Can you tell us a bit about that?
When I was the president of the Paul Ehrlich Society, then I had the honor to chair the so-called Second European Congress of Chemotherapy. And this was organized by FESCI, and FESCI is the Federation of European Societies for Chemotherapy and for Infection, which are affiliated to ISAC. I had the honor to chair the second Congress in Hamburg with around 500 participants.
And there was collaboration with BICON. Tell me about that. That seemed to be one of the earlier attempts to bring in colleagues from Eastern Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah, that is true. That BICON means biennial congresses. The societies more from Eastern Europe as well included. And they also wanted to have congresses every 2 years. But with this second Congress I could chair, they were combined. The BICON and this European Congress were combined to one Congress. And unfortunately, it was not possible to have this combination later on. That would have been my aim, but unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Can you remember why BICON wasn't a continued success?
Yeah, you see, that is always the same. Some persons are very much involved, and when they stop their leadership in the society, they do not look for followers. And I think that is important for societies. And I think ISC is a very good exception, that you have to look for followers and not just say, my time is over and I'm not interested anymore.
I remember working a lot with Vladimir Krechmery from Bratislava.
Absolutely. He was very much involved in BICON, and unfortunately, he also died fairly early.
Yeah. That's a European experience, but you're well known as a collaborator, particularly with the people in the Far East. How was your international experience? First, say, outside of ISAC, and then we'll come back to ISAC.
Yeah, you're right, but maybe this all happens somehow through ISAC. Therefore, I'd just like to mention, I started with ISC, and then, of course, I become interested also in other areas. And I was invited by the Japanese UTI committee in 1989 in Tokyo by its chairman, Mosaki Okoshi. And he invited several colleagues from North America, Europe, and various Asian countries to this first international symposium. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the different study protocol regulations used in the world, with the aim to come maybe to an international accepted study protocol. And usually the speakers from different parts of the world, they presented the studies from their own countries with their protocol. And I tried to combine it. In my presentation, I used data of a recent study and evaluated them according to American guidelines, European guidelines, Japanese guidelines. And finally, I could demonstrate there's no much difference between the guidelines. And then the chairman said, okay, now I know that at least one in the West knows the Japanese guidelines.
And did you manage to continue that work? You formed the International Commission for UTI.
Yeah, therefore, after the end of this meeting, we founded this International Commission. And Masaki Okoshi, of course, was the chair, and I was elected as secretary. And during the meeting in the International Commission for UTI, after the 17th ICC in Berlin, 1991, I was elected then as chair of this working group, which became affiliated 1994 to the ISAC.
Yeah.
Then it was decided to organize every 2 years also an international symposium close to the ICC.
I think that was a very successful model, which has been quite well adhered to by other interest groups in ISAC. So that was very important. What about other societies around the world?
Yeah, okay. Besides the very close contact to the Japanese UTI committee, especially to the two persons, Yoshiaki Kumamoto from Sapporo, he showed me the Olympic institutions in Sapporo when the Olympic Games were there, and Yoshiaki Kumasawa from Fukuoka. I also was very close contact to the Korean Association of Urogenital Tract Infection and Inflammation, which was founded in 1999 with his first president, Yong-Yun Cho from the Catholic University of Seoul. And also then they were built the Asian Association of UTI and STI, and I was very often in their meetings. Last time I was invited and took part in their combined meeting in July 2023 in Seoul. So that was very interesting, but I was also invited by many other Asian societies.
Well, indeed, Russian, I think, and a Latin American group as well.
Yeah, Russia is between Europe and Asia. And in 2007, they founded a so-called conference on rational pharmacotherapy in urology in Moscow. And since that time, I also was invited to their yearly conferences, and I also went to many other Russian cities. Now, unfortunately, this is not possible nowadays and therefore in some of the conferences I took part online. Also, I would like to mention I had good contact to Latin American groups and took part there in 2007 in the so-called LATAM group with Jorge Milem Haddad. He's the chair of the urogynecology division of the Sao Paulo University in Brazil. And we had many years very good contact with this group from Brazil, but also Argentina.
When did you first get involved with ISAC?
ISAC. My first meeting with ISAC was 1973 in Greece under the presidency of George Dikos, a co-founder and former president of ISC. First, the Congress took place in Athens. Then we all went on boats, and on each of the following days, the Congress took place on a different Greek island. After that, I took part in all following congresses until the 28th ICC 2013 in Yokohama, Japan.
That sounds fascinating. Do you remember all the Greek islands that you visited?
Yes, I went to all the congresses in between.
A historical note there, of course, George K. Dikos was a legendary figure.
Absolute Dikos.
I died age 106 only last year, I think, and I think was quite well until the end. A fascinating bit of history, a true inspiration also for the formation of the British Society of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy. You had an extended career in ISAC. As I recall, when I first joined, you were the powerhouse behind ISAC.
Yeah, okay. When Tom Bergan, of course, Tom Bergan from Norway was president, I was elected into the executive committee of the ISC for the team and then became Secretary General 2003 to 5 and President 5 to 9 and, of course, then past President automatically from 9 to 13. During my presidency, the executive committee of the ISC consisted of so many people from all over the world, and to have contact with so many different parts of the world represented by these colleagues, that was a very good experience. Of course, you were included at that time, and also Fiona McKinsey. At that time, she was executive director, and I also remember Alistair Geddes and, of course, Farida Mosdain very well during that time.
I remember these times very well with great affection. We were very privileged to be able to work with all these great people. What about the highlights of your ISAC activities?
Yeah, okay. Of course, during my presidency of the ISC, I was involved in planning in the organization team of the ICC 2007 in Munich, Germany, just in front of my house, and in 2009 in Toronto, Canada. And this was a great experience during my professional life to be involved in this organization and topics and so on.
You would have worked with John David Williams, J.D. Williams, as known to his many friends. He was an early mentor to me. What are your memories of him? Of course, he's long died, unfortunately.
Yeah, there are very specific persons, of course, who helped me a lot to get into the ISAC, and therefore I remember them. David Williams, one of the person, and he also founded the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents, that is the Society's journal.
So, Kurt, you've had a highly varied and I imagine very exciting and fulfilling career in medicine. And I wouldn't have thought you had time for much else. Obviously, you were a family man, but you did lots of other things. Tell us a little bit about them the last few minutes.
Yeah, I was also involved in many non-medical activities in my hometown. For example, I was a member of the city council from 1984 to 2006. And particularly, I was devoted to cultural events or integration of migrants or environmental issues. For example, we built a society about integration. We founded it in 94 during the war, which were between Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, and so many refugees came to Germany. But also during that time, German descent and Jewish citizens from Russia came to Germany. And all these people needed some contact, but also to become members of the society. And our group, which we have founded, was very much involved in that.
I think you've had a formidable problem with integrating people from other countries who've come, particularly through war. Even to this day, I guess there are a lot of Ukrainian refugees.
Yeah, okay. We still have the problem, but now I'm not involved on the first line. Now other people still work in this group we have founded at that time, but now I'm not in the first line anymore. Now I'm more in classical music because we have also founded a group organizing classical music concerts in my hometown. And what I like very much, and about 10 concerts, and still I'm very much involved to do this with well-known artists, bring to Straubing, to show them where is Straubing.
Well, Kurt, I'm very impressed by all your activities. You've always struck me as a powerhouse, and it's been a great pleasure to speak to you today. And on behalf of ISAC, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.